This recording is for the Dixon Public Library's Oral History Project. Today, July 16th, 1998, I'm here in the home of Mae Azevedo. Is that the correct pronunciation? Azevedo. Mae Azevedo, here in Dixon. My name is Paul Ferrell, and of course we're going to talk about Dixon and what Mae saw over the years, the changes and things. But before we do that, let's get a little family history, whatever you might happen to know off the top of your head. Do you know about your great-grandparents?
No, my great-grandparents never got over to the United States. They were from the Azores.
The Azores. Portuguese.
Portuguese.
Mm-hmm.
My father came here in it was way back. He was only 14 or 16, came to America all by his lonesome. And the way he got over here was they used coal in the ships to make them go, and he did the shoveling. He never got out of they fed him and everything was down there. And he said, boy, that was a hard way to pay your way over here. But he had great respect for America. He always used to say, if anybody said anything that wasn't quite right, he'd always say, well, if you don't like it, you can just go back. I'm sure they didn't send you an engraved invitation. He says, I came here to better myself, and I appreciate that they left me.
Well, how did he better himself? What did he do here?
Well, at first he worked for some people, because in those days, evidently, you had to have a sponsor, and his family sponsored him. So he worked for them until he got on his feet and got used to America, and then he, of course, learned the language, and he would, first he was in a dairy, so he went in the dairy business.
Right here in Dixon?
No, first it was in San Pablo, which really is not that kind of they don't have a lot of dairies that didn't have, but there was a big dairy. It was Borden's, the old beginning of Borden's, I think, and because that's what it ended up as, Borden's. And he became like a partner or something, and then when he came up here. I don't know how he got here, but he decided he bought this ranch where we are on today. It was called the Maes Estate, and that Dixon Estates over there was part of it. And he bought this ranch is in two sections. He bought the first section from Nick Fido. That's way back when. And then he rented it out to his sister and brother-in-law, and he still lived in San Pablo. Then after the war, 1918, right very shortly after that, we moved to Dixon. So I've been here since 1918. And I was 6 years old, so you know what that means. But, and he went in the dairy business, and he had a grade A dairy, which was considered good. And all the equipment, he used to cool off the milk. He had a cooler. They run the milk over, and then the trucks would, from San Francisco or wherever the creameries were, Sacramento also, would pick them up bright. They had to milk real early so everything could stay cool. I don't think they had refrigerated trucks in those days. And they would pick up the milk in 10-gallon cans, take them to the creameries.
What about the train? Did they use the train to do
Yes, they used the train too. We used to take it down here to the depot that is not there anymore, and put those on, and that one went to San Francisco.
Now, you said you moved to Dixon in 1918 at the age of 6. Do you remember that move?
Oh, yes.
You do?
We had a Chalmers car, and it was a 7-passenger. I don't know why, but I was the only child. But maybe it was bargain or something. And it had this little seats, jump seats, I think they used to call them. But you saw the 5 passengers and then these 2 little seats that were kind of like folding things. And we moved up here. I brought my cat all the way, and we made it all the way. Because we came, let's see, I remember the road wasn't so good. We came through Martinez, I think. There's long water there. You look down here, it's on one side it was deep, and there was water. And over here was the side of the hill. When you met another car, there wasn't much room. So I do remember.
So you got up here to Dixon, and you lived on a ranch.
Yeah. The house that's over there,
Mm-hmm.
that's the house we had. Of course,
So-
it's just been done over so many times it doesn't look anything like it did. It's still some of the original rooms in there.
Well, what's it like growing up on a ranch?
Well, I was pretty young, so it didn't bother me, and the change didn't bother me any. But we had cows, and they milked them, and they got up wee hours of the morning to milk them, and then they'd milk them again in the evening or late afternoon. So milked them twice a day,
Mm-hmm.
So that was, and we had alfalfa back in the ranch, and that was the thing cut, and they'd get about 5 cuttings. If you're lucky, you might get 6, mostly 5. And then they'd put up the hay. My father didn't allow us ladies to do any, it was just my mother and I, to do any milking or that was a man's job. He belonged to doing your housework and your garden and stuff.
Your father must have had a lot of work. I heard the old
Pardon?
saying, I heard that farmers never have a day off, especially
right.
dairy farmers.
It was terrible.
Hmm.
But he had it for all of his life, practically. And he lived right here. We had the big barn where they milked the cows and where they fed them. They also, that was for winter time, that they fed them outside in the summer in good weather. They had these big, long stanchions that the cows stick their heads in. And there was a trough like in front where they put the hay.
Now, what about your mother? How did she contribute to the farm if she wasn't out
She cooked
milking
for
the cows?
the help. See, we had hired help.
Uh-huh.
And they had bunkhouses, small bunkhouses where they bunked up. There was just single men. There was no ladies around.
Mm-hmm.
Some were younger, some were older. And they did the milking. And I remember some of the fellows were real nice, and they would help my mother do the dishes. And stuff like that.
Now, this work they did,
Well, they had to milk the cows. They had to keep those barns spick and span where they milked the cows, because it was a grade A dairy. And I remember the barns, so it was in the middle. It was like a runway here, and that's where they put the the feed for them. And then the stanchions were on each side, and the cows went in the barn, and they put them in the stanchions. And I remember they used to close them somehow so they couldn't get their heads out. They were in there to stay till they got through eating. And then they let off sections at a time when they were left the barn to go to the corral. Of course, the winter time was kind of muddy. But my dad was very fussy, and he used to, part of the corral was, had cement, and they'd scrape that off so it'd be clean, wash it off, and the cows could stand on there when it was raining or when it was muddy. But they also had a big barn where they could be in, or like, you know, sheds that had roofs over the top so they wouldn't be in the storm or bad weather. So that's what I remember about the farm. We had chickens. That was my mother and I's project. We gather our eggs every day, fresh eggs. Fresh eggs and fresh milk. And my mother'd make bread practically every other day. The men liked that nice hot bread.
Mm-hmm.
And we had a little orchard. Had peach trees and plums, nectarines, fig tree, and one of the fig trees is still there.
Mm-hmm.
So the old house is still there.
Now the old house, I guess originally it didn't have electricity, or did it have electricity in 1918? Do you know?
We had electricity, but we didn't have, we still had an outhouse when we came here. But my father objected to that because we had, living in San Pablo, we had a bathroom with running hot water and everything. So that was kind of a step down there, and not having a nice bathroom. So that was the first project, to build a bathroom but it was a while before we got the running hot water. I used to have those stoves that had, you could have trash burner, and it had a thing run through it that you could heat the water. It's got the heat from the stove. And that's what my mother baked the bread in, one of those big ovens. They roasted good turkeys.
Now, what about the farm equipment? Were they using horses or tractors?
We still used horses when we first came up here to cut the hay. I can still see the equipment. It was, you know, the side up this thing they put it down like this, and they'd cut the hay. And when they got through, they'd raise it up. That was I think they call it a scythe, right?
I don't know. You're the farmer.
No,
I think
I'm
that's the name. Well,
not me.
You're from a family of farmers.
Yeah, right. Well, anyway, that was the thing, the knife that cut it. And then they'd have big wagons that they put the hay on. And they were kind of closed in the sides because they threw in the green hay. And they fed them green hay when they were cutting it. They had to be very careful because the cows would get bloated and they'd die. So we had to watch. I remember Dad losing a few, and I taught him, because they didn't have green hay where he came from. So he had to, then they let it dry out in the field, and then they would have it baled. There was an old-fashioned baler. They had wire that wired the bales. And they stack it in the barn so it wouldn't get wet for winter.
So, let's see. So, green hay was new to your father. Different from at San Pablo?
It wasn't grain hay, it was alfalfa.
Green alfalfa. That would harm the cows if it was...
Yeah, if they eat it, they eat too much of it. They'll bloat. They used to have a punch.
For what?
A silver punch that they used to, up there, they used to, right by the, I don't know what you call it, but it was their stomach. And they'd take that punch and it had a cover on it, and they'd punch them, and all this gas would escape from their stomach. Even some of the green grass would come flying out of there.
And it wouldn't harm the cow?
Pardon?
That would not harm the cow?
No, that's save their life.
That would save their life.
And it was like, they used to call it a punch. It was a silver thing, and it'd make a hole about that big. Oh, about that big. Gee whiz. That's really going back.
Well, I was wondering about the roads. You said the road from San Pablo was awfully bad. How about the roads around Dixon? I suppose they got pretty muddy in the winter?
Yeah, they got pretty muddy in the winter. Not as bad as it could be. But some were pretty muddy. Some still are pretty muddy in winter.
Now, you're going to school. Which school did you go to?
I went to Sylvieville, which was out in the country, that direction. That would be what? It was along the trail of the, let's see, where the stagecoach came in, the old stagecoach. The school was on that trail. The school coach came through. I forget where it came from, though. I don't know if it was Sacramento or where.
It must have been. I think Sylvieville was a stage stop.
Yeah, it was a stage stop. And the people, the Ahern family, of course, there's a new house there now. When the old house, though, was where they used to stop.
Now, and then there was a school there. That's
there.
the one you went to.
Yeah, and back of where I went to school, because the school was new, was a big shed, like a big barn is what it was. And that's where they used to keep the horses overnight, or they exchanged the horses. Yeah.
Well, what was school like? Did you have a big class? Or?
We had, I think we were 20-something in the class, 26.
That's pretty good size.
Yeah, it was maybe not quite that many.
Now, we're talking about grammar school, right?
Yeah, it wasn't quite that many, because high school we were 26. But, let's see, there's the Schroeder family, and they still live out there, too.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that opened the new vegetable stand, Schroeder family.
Oh, I didn't know that.
See, I went to school with their father,
Now,
Elmer Schroeder.
I guess we're getting off the subject, but Schroeder, wasn't that a dry goods store? Or am I thinking of something else? There was a German name that began with S, and they had dry goods in Dixon.
Ooh.
Schulze or...
It was a Schulze, but I thought his was a jewelry store.
Oh, I must be mixed up. Well, anyway...
But there was a Steinmiller, I know.
Steinmiller?
He was the leather man.
That's the way it went in Dixon. Certain prominent families, prominent for Dixon anyway.
Yeah.
And I guess there's a lot of cousins in Dixon, aren't there?
What?
A lot of cousins in Dixon.
Oh, yeah.